The screen. All right, you're live.
Great. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the House Progressive Caucus. This is a meeting on, I was supposed to say the date, January 10th, 2023. And this is the first meeting of the session for the House Progressives. And I think what we'll first start by doing is going around and doing a round of introductions, because we have our new staff member for the session with us today, which we're very excited about, and a couple of guests in the room too, which you can or cannot introduce yourself. It's totally up to you, but we like to be friendly here in this pocket. And then we have a few, it shouldn't be a very long meeting. We have a few kind of procedural things to update you on from House leadership this morning, and some pieces about getting ourselves organized for other public caucuses going forward, and how we plan to use this time for not only our caucus, but our colleagues who are always welcome to come to our caucus. All right. So with that, let's do some introductions. Does anyone want to start? Or you want to start? All right.
Troy Hedrick. I am from Chittenden 15, which is Burlington, and in and around campus and the hospital, and then down the hill a bit.
And what committee do you serve on?
I am on corrections and institutions.
And Kate Logan, representative for Chittenden 16, which is Old North End in downtown Burlington, and I serve on the committee on environment and energy. I use she and they pronouns.
Sometimes get that.
I'm Sarah, the legislative assistant for the Black House Caucus, and I'm from Burlington. And I'm just happy to be here. So many cool people.
It's Sarah's first day, so we're gonna break her in gently. And I'm Representative Emma Mulvaney-Stanek. I use she, her pronouns, and I represent Chittenden 17, which is half of the Old North End and the southern portion of the New North End. And I, for this biennium, will be the caucus leader. Taylor's not here, so we'll introduce Taylor when she gets here. Brian.
I'm Brian Sheena. From Chittenden 15, Healthcare Committee.
And I serve on Commerce. Great. And our guests want to say a quick hi?
David Mickenberg, I'm an attorney and lobbyist, and work on lots of labor and drug policy issues.
I'm Matthew DeGroat. I'm legislative assistant for Action Circles, which lobbies on behalf of nonprofit and social service organizations.
Great, thanks for both being here. All right, so a couple of highlights from this morning at House leadership. Taylor very kindly took notes, Representative Small, and so you'll have those in your inbox, but I want to just go over them in case people have questions really quickly. So our floor schedule is going to be pretty much the same for the next 3 to 4 weeks. That's largely because there's most of our time is going to be spent in committee. And so when we do meet on the floor, it will be pretty brief. So as you try to plan your lives and your schedule, just have that in the back of your mind. It's probably going to be for the next 3 or so weeks until bills start to move out of committee. So on Tuesdays, the floor starts at 10, Wednesdays and Thursdays at 3, and Fridays at 9:30. When we get more bills to act on Wednesday and Thursday, we'll move to 1 o'clock in terms of floor time, and then your committees will adjust around that. Just a reminder, COVID is in the building, so people should just be aware of, I know, newsflash, right? COVID is in the building, and so we had no clerks here in the building today. Hopefully that starts to come back next week, and that's why we did that memo from Betsy Ann this morning. Everybody seems to be doing okay, but we want to send them all some healing energy, but just be mindful. And if you yourself, unfortunately, can track COVID, they are still trying to track. So if there's an email that I can help put you in touch with to send that information so that we can try to keep the building healthy and safe as we go through the continuation of this pandemic and doing this job.
Are there masks that we can go get like right now if we want?
Yep, there are masks. I know there was a mask in the governor's office. I think there's, like, do you know where there's a
Anyway, I'm gonna want to do that because I just want to be careful.
Brian, would you mind grabbing one for
I'll
me?
just grab a bunch and put them in my bag, please.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
It'll just be 1 minute. I need water.
Right. Just also, I think this is great for accessibility. There's now, I don't know why they're calling it utility vehicle, but it's a vehicle that's helping folks to physically get from the State House to the pavilion for caucuses or other meetings happening there. But that's great for just accessibility purposes for folks who need that assist to get from point A to point B as we spread out in the Capitol complex. You can get that by going into what's called the Lincoln Hallway, which is the Lincoln bus statue down the main lobby. If you go out the back door that's behind the statue, that's where the vehicle will be if you need to use it. Brief update on House rules. That committee meets at 12:30. Progressives don't have a formal seat on that committee, but we do attend. And so that's usually a role that Taylor and I tag team to attend. We can participate, but again, we don't have a formal vote. We will be finally picking up stuff that came up last week on the committee jurisdiction list that we came up in some of the discussion on the floor. There also will be the official discussion of the appointments to 3 different panels, the sexual harassment panel, ethics, and discrimination. So all of the folks that we've discussed about being appointees from this caucus will be on that list. So Troy, the sexual harassment panel, your name will be put forward. Brian will stay on ethics, and Taylor will stay on discrimination. And so that all came together. This is important for, I'm actually going to come back to this because I want to make sure all the members hear this, but we had a discussion about remote participation and the rules related to House committees and when you can participate in voting. We have reverted to pre-COVID rules, meaning that there's nothing in our rules that allow, unfortunately, people to participate remotely. There was some custom and practices, but rules is again going to talk about that. And and we'll talk about this more as the caucus. I'm happy to pause here. It's been in my experience the last 2 years that we really need to modernize these rules to accommodate real life for people and make this a more humane job to be able to do within reason. And that includes looking at remote participation. We have these tools, we have this accessibility, and life happens, and it should include a member from being able to participate in an important committee discussion or vote, again, within reason. And, so that is coming up, but right now I want people to know, unfortunately, including if you have COVID, you cannot participate remotely, you cannot vote remotely until we change that on the House rules level. So just heads up on that. Okay. There are more trainings to come. These are required and some are revised on ethics. That will be coming up soon. The discrimination prevention panel also does trainings to make members available are familiar with the policy. And I'm hoping that also gets integrated with some pieces that the Social Equity Caucus has been talking about making committees more inclusive and safe, to be perfectly honest, for members of the public to testify, for there not to be harmful comments made in the committee, and just really thinking about how we continue to make our democratic process a constructive one and a safe space for people to engage. So hopefully that gets woven into that particular series of trainings. Let's see, last things. We are going to talk later today about, there's another whole series of joint committees that the speaker will be appointed that ranges from LCAR to, there's literally almost 20 different additional committees he appointed to. We'll talk about that more later. And a reminder, I just want to check, has everybody turned in their oath of office or disclosure?
One of mine might be in my desk because I was waiting for a board to tell me what my title was on it, so I'll double check.
Okay, great. If everyone can get that in today, if possible, that would be great. If the clerk's still waiting for some cases. Okay. And Brian, just for your benefit, I just want to repeat. Right now, we have reverted back to pre-COVID rules for member participation in committees and on the floor, meaning that until rules gets to it, House rules, which it meets today, we'll start the conversation. Unfortunately, members cannot participate. They can watch on YouTube, but you can't participate through Zoom and you can't vote remotely at this point.
That's weird because we used to be able to call in when we were sick and do it over the phone.
And that was apparently informal, customary, whatever the right phrase is, customary, and it was never in the actual rules. So now we're talking about, and the Senate just had a similar conversation. So hopefully we do this soon. Okay. All right. I think that's the leadership. Any questions on any of that before our next couple items? Make sense? And Taylor and I will have that process when we send out the notes right afterwards. So some of this stuff impacts before, like literally 30 minutes later. So if you just know that we send that pretty immediately, so you know what's on the floor.
Does anyone mind if I crack a window a little? Because it's a harm reduction measure during COVID. Like it can reduce the chance of exposure, particularly dramatically. All right.
I think I remember that.
Okay. Just a crack. We just need a little more ventilation. This is a tiny room.
Yeah, looks like there's storm windows in.
Yeah, I don't,
That was
Oh, well, then don't worry about it.
I don't think those windows open, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, it used to, but it
Yeah.
doesn't now. No.
we are okay. Like my parents. The door can get put down. Mom and dad, if you're listening, I didn't know that. Or you're from the house.
We have a smorgasbord of masks.
Yeah. So, and by the way, the meeting location, this is just for today with the clerk staffing situation. So, we're gonna try to move to a large room over in the tax building and all take a field trip tomorrow. And we'll also work better at the timing of trying not to overlap and leave of passing time, if you will, between when the Dem caucus ends and our caucus begins. So we'll figure that all out next week. So I wanted to just do a quick go around. This is the season of bills starting to be finalized with legislative council and bills getting ready for the co-sponsorship phase. If people are interested, you don't have, except if you have a bill, you have to find co-sponsors, but we'll talk more a little bit later about how we want to invite other legislators to our caucus who are looking to have our whole caucus sign on, full market. But as I understand it, there's two ways to do this. And Brian, with you as our senior member here, there's two ways now, given what we developed during COVID. There's the electronic way to collect co-sponsors. So it is your job as a sponsor of a bill to go out and seek co-sponsors from whomever you wish to sign on to your bill. And so they've asked either you to use one or the other. And my understanding, when I've talked to Leg Council, the electronic way is you collect all the names via email. They certify that they do want to be on that bill, if you will, and then you send that list to Leg Council. The other is, why don't you speak to the other, because I haven't done it yet, but the in-person form and the,
Yeah.
I'm trying to be my Brian, just
No, I don't mind. I'm actually gonna be using the in-person one for certain bills that are like big ones, because it creates some excitement for people to physically engage with it, but like, it's a copy of the bill. And then there's a sign out sheet, and it has like every member's name on it, and then you initial like next to your name if you want to be on it. And so you'll notice, like you said, people were just doing that. I think it sounds like in a caucus, so people, you'll pass them around, people will initial. So that's the old fashioned way. And then I think they go, I don't know if they're still using pink envelopes.
Yeah,
but they go pink envelopes.
magic. I'm just teasing.
A page will bring it to you, or Leg Council will tell you it's waiting in your, I don't know where the mailboxes are anymore, but like they would be in your mailbox, or like a lawyer will tell you when you go pick it up. There's all different ways, like usually the lawyer will coordinate it with you, who's writing your bill.
So the pages will either deliver that to you. I wasn't in the building Friday. They put it in my mailbox. So it's down in front of the Sergeant of Arms office. Those filing cabinets are actually our mailbox. So give them to them. Go get some, mail there, and that's where, if the page can't find you, that's what we're talking about. So no expectation today, because I know I'm not even like all my bills, actually, it's one I had to make a final change in. Is anyone interested in sharing bills yet within our caucus?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, yeah, so if you want to share what it is and then do sponsorship.
Yeah, I was working on this last night because me and Troy have to go to a constituent meeting this week, so I was preparing, but where did I put them? I have so many lists. Okay, so I'm almost ready. Here it is. All right, so soon there will be a paper copy of Universal Primary Care bill, the latest version. So what it is it's related to implementing Green Mountain Care as originally dreamed of in Act 48. But what it does is it starts with universal primary care for 2 years while a group figures out the plan over 10 years to transition to full universal health care in Vermont. And it's funded. I don't know how much detail people want, so I won't get too much, but this one I think is important because advocates are in the building today, so they'll probably speak with you about it. The funding mechanism is a payroll tax and a self-employment tax. So the idea is that there would be a small tax on income, and but there would be a reduction in the premium people pay. And then over time, the idea is that this would like stabilize the rising cost of healthcare premiums while providing universal benefits to people. And we also talk about using an income tax surcharge for a few years. This advisory group is tasked with kind of looking at that as a way to build a fund to kind of back the system by taxing those who benefited the most during the pandemic to create this public good of universal health care. And then there'll be a public banking bill possibly. There's some discussion about what the strategy should be on that, but there is a state bank bill drafted right now. There's a tenants' rights bill that would give the right of first refusal to renters in not only apartment buildings, but also single family homes in this version. And an idea around rent stabilization in there, where there would be tax incentives for keeping rent below a certain amount and penalties for going above a certain amount. And I think the question is, how do we determine what that amount is? What is affordable rent? I think we're looking at 30% of the median area income, maybe as a starting point for the discussion. right now, people are paying 50% of the area median income for their rent. So that would be a huge improvement if we were rewarding landlords for keeping it at 30%. And then there's going to be a moratorium on construction of new prisons in one bill. And then another that goes along with it is an anti-recidivism and public safety act, which would look at replacing prisons with secure residential. And so building out the housing continuum from the most secure residential to the least restrictive. For people who've gone through the due process and have been convicted of a crime. And the idea being, instead of responding to crime with punishment, we're responding to crime with restriction of people's freedom and wraparound services to help people address the challenges that led to the crimes, so that we could reduce recidivism. And we saw that in Norway, like recidivism went from like 76% to 20-something% with this kind of approach. And then
And Brian, are these all ready for co-sponsors? Is that,
they're all, universal primary care should be ready this week.
Okay.
Others, they're gonna be rolling out,
Okay.
so, maybe what I'll do is, instead of telling you about the details of the others, I'll just say what they are, so that, it's taking a lot of time and there's
yeah,
more.
oh, which is totally fine.
Okay.
What I'm thinking about is that for each public caucus, for those who watch at home and guests and whatnot, I want to make sure people are aware of what, so maybe we're gonna have this as a standing agenda item for the next 3 or so weeks as introductions happen. So maybe share out today, if it's okay, ones that are gonna be ready this week. And so we can both let
Yeah.
people know, give you that platform for it, and then we can also consider signing on. Is that
Yeah.
good?
It's hard to know, but what I can do is, there's like, what I'll do is, instead of explaining them all, I'll say that there's gonna be multiple agriculture bills related to building a network of year-round agriculture in Vermont, and we can get into those details when they're ready.
Great.
And there's gonna be 2 bills related to entheogenic plant and fungal medicines. One is a decriminalized nature bill, like last session, that would just remove penalties. It's basically like legalization of ayahuasca, psilocybin, peyote, and iboga. And then the second one would do that for psilocybin and create a working group to look at how to safely implement psychedelic assisted treatment. That one should be done this week. That's why I wanted to say a little bit more about it.
Great.
And then there's a few others that we can get to later, just because of the time.
Yeah, great. And we,
All right.
and as I said,
Yeah.
standing items. So it sounds like universal primary care bill, and then the 1 or 2 that you just mentioned around plant medicine are potentially coming.
Exactly, those are the 3 yes, yeah.
And just a reminder to our new colleagues that you can either let Brian know, or when you have the physical sign up sheets, that's when you can get your name onto these bills. And as I understand it too, when you have a physical sign up, there's a copy of the bill too. So if you want to
Yes.
look through it, because unless the legislator sends you an attachment, it doesn't exist on the website anywhere. So until it gets introduced, that's when it starts to appear. Okay, thanks, Brian. Troy, did you have?
You,
Okay,
I should
great.
have a pink envelope any day now, and maybe it's already down in the mailbox. I haven't checked yet. This is a short form bill. It'll go to the education committee, so they're gonna have a lot of leeway on finalizing kind of the language. The intent, I want to be clear about what the intent is, and more importantly, probably what it is not. The intent really is to put up a firewall between our K-12 public educators and the various outside far-right private interest groups that are infiltrating various school boards to have impact on curriculum and books, and pulling books from shelves, and telling teachers what they can and cannot talk about in their classrooms. Very simply, bill proposes to protect the academic freedom of public educators and their right to teach on matters of gender identity and systemic and structural racism. I want to be clear that this does not mandate curriculum. It does not intend to kind of guarantee broad academic freedom. Academic freedom in K-12 is a different topic than it is in higher education. It really just essentially prohibits those who do develop curriculum from prohibiting our teachers from talking about race, racial identity, gender identity, white supremacy, those types of topics.
Your first bill, Troy.
No,
Yay.
it's exciting.
I'm here to celebrate.
I have 2 members in the education committee already committed to signing on, and I think it's got some good energy.
And good work, Brian, so of course. It's exciting when people get their first bill together, you know, kind of a momentous moment. Great. Okay, so let us know when and how you want us to sign on. Same deal. Kate, do you have anything ready for this week? That's out there?
It won't be ready
Okay.
this week.
Okay, sounds good. I have what has turned into two, which is why it's not ready now. So as you know, I've been working on a firearms bill. It's going to be two bills. One is still related to firearms, but it's a strategy about where the committee's jurisdiction will go. The first includes a lot of pretty obvious pieces, of course, including building off of what's been called for within the city of Burlington. So it includes in no particular order, safe storage rules for folks who own firearms, waiting periods of up to 10 days for people when they purchase a firearm. It will include some civil and criminal liability related to it, going back to safe storage. If you don't, it's a short form, so these are concepts, of course. If your firearm is used and it's found out that you did not have it safely stored, that's where the civil and criminal liability would kick in. Prohibiting guns from places where alcohol is served. So this was the original Burlington City Charter change about 8 years ago that did not pass this body here in the legislature. And prohibiting possession of a firearm for someone who committed a hate crime. That's the end of that first bill. So those are all the components within that firearm bill. And then going into a second bill is requiring the AOE to establish a model policy for all school districts in the state around active shooter drills. So these are drills that are done in various different ways. There's loose guidelines within the administration at this point, but all school districts do this differently. I can tell you a whole lot more about this, but one of my youngest constituents, my own kiddo, just as they've been coming back online as schools have been going back to normal operations. My second grader told me a really jarring story of her first experience going through one of them as a second grader. And so this was a policy, you'll see it in the bill, outlines is making sure that it's trauma informed, does not involve students who are younger than 9th grade. There's a lot of studies out there that show that these have a sort of harmful impact, and it's not effective to actually have kids practice these lockdown. And lockdown is slightly different, but drills that are related to active shooters. So feel pretty passionate about that one. I'm fully into a second bill because I'm hoping it goes to education cleanly, and the rest of it would be traditionally goes to judiciary. So those will be coming around this week. I welcome co-sponsors to that, and onward we go. And I don't know if Taylor has any bills, but we'll see next week. I'll have some labor bills. I know we have some labor friends in the room today, but so there will be some more coming there around ability to organize unions more easily. It's also called just cause, but good cause employment rights for people who don't have, well, all workers, especially those who don't have access to a union. Usual stuff in my world of economic justice. So stay tuned for some more stuff. Anything else for bills at the moment? Okay, and for folks watching, and I know we had an overlap with the Dem Caucus, this will be a standing agenda item, and we'll also have a standing process for members who are not members of our caucus who want to come and share their bills in these next couple of weeks, so that we can we're always open to hearing what other people have in mind and make it easy to find us to co-sponsor. Okay. And also a quick reminder, if Taylor is collecting our bills so that we are advancing as a progressive caucus. So even if it's just the names and the concepts, please email her so she can start working with Sarah. Now that we have Sarah to keep track of our bills, so that's help Sarah write her weekly updates that we'll start doing at the end of this week as a caucus out to the public and all of our supporters. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about, and then I'll let y'all go to lunch, is talk a little bit about, it's been a tradition, I'm not sure it's that word, been past practice of the Progressive Caucus to share our public caucus time with advocates to highlight important issues that may or may not be moving in the building, and we want to be moving in the building because it aligns with our values and our principles of the caucus. And so I'd like to just do a brief brainstorm from no more than 10 minutes or so I can let people go about what some of those early topics should be, so that Sarah, Taylor, and I can start working on scheduling people. And we usually do it thematically, so 1 or 2 topics such caucus. So we only have usually 45 minutes or so to speak. So we can just dive right on time. Representative, come on in. We're just moving. Actually, before I get to the last topic, do you have any bills that are moving this week of yours that you'd like to let us know for sponsorship? No pressure. It'll go about it.
Sure.
And do you want to introduce yourself to people since we're live? And
Hi everyone, Representative Taylor Small from Winooski, serving on House Human Services and Assistant Caucus Leader. One that I will put on folks' radar right now is secondary enforcement of violations for motor vehicles. There's a report coming out this year, recognizing the disproportionate impact on marginalized folks, in particular people of color, when it comes to traffic stops and violations. So hoping to move a lot of primary enforcement to secondary, so folks aren't being pulled over, but could also have that discussion with an officer. So would love co-sponsors, happy to talk more about it. If folks have questions. And more to come next week.
Great. And we're gonna have this as a getting agenda items. So things are ready to move that week. That's what we're gonna try to keep it to. Great. So back to our brainstorm. So future guests, and I'll kick us off by saying what I've been doing a lot of thinking around since the speaker has made this priority, and we know there's an ongoing housing crisis in the state, and some of us even have bills in the works around trying to address this. I would love for us to perhaps have a conversation soon on housing and renters in particular. We've moved a lot of resources that have gone to landlords in many cases, are building brand new buildings, which is all needed. But I am interested in knowing how this is really starting to trickle down, and I don't like that phrase, but really impact in a beneficial way tenants strategically or not. And is this a policy opportunity for us to really be thinking about that strategically this session and make sure we are moving resources and addressing the unaffordable nature of rents, and as well as the rights and protections of tenants. I know a lot of us have supported just cause eviction in the past, but I think it's timely to have that conversation sooner in the session versus later, given the heightened attention to housing policy. So that's one I wanted to throw out. But any idea is so true brainstorm style. So what else would people be interested in hearing it now or at some point in the session, and or actual advocacy organizations too? Of course, just see what they're up to.
I would like to make space to hear from the network, to end, I think, domestic violence and free her, which is a coalition connected with the Council of Formerly Incarcerated and Incarcerated Women, I think they're called, and just, it's maybe giving us some space to talk about the prison moratorium and the sort of new way that we're trying to dream of, at a meeting. And we could maybe invite some other advocates to be part of that discussion, like the Racial Justice Alliance and others who've worked on public safety stuff. So that's just one thing I would like to make space for later in the session. And the other thing I'll just say, well, I have the mic, is labor issues. So you have labor advocates here, and I just think, and I think that doesn't really need to be said in the Progressive Caucus, but it's important that we keep saying it. That we'll make some space here in addition to the Working Vermonters Caucus.
Thanks, Brian. And do people want to use official titles, by the way, or first names?
In this meeting, I would like my first. I like first.
First name, is that okay? Okay. Sorry for not asking that in the beginning. Okay, great. You can call me Zarina Mulvaney Stanek. Okay, great. First name, great.
Share or
Or
whatever.
Supreme something. I'll get a crown. Great. We love democracy. Okay. I'm here for the jokes. Yes, Sarah, go ahead.
Me too. They're great. I just wanted to mention, I got a call from someone from 350 who wanted to meet with the House Caucus. I'm not sure if that would be most appropriate for this. It seemed like they wanted it to be more of a collaborative meeting, and I don't know if this has been like more for, just hearing from advocates and like moving their ideas, but I thought it could be appropriate to bring up now, just talking about their alterations to like clean heat standard and renewable energy credits and things like that. So
That would be great. Okay. Brainstorm, classic. All ideas are valid. So what else? What else are you starting to be interested in?
So just came from a meeting discussing provider shield laws for gender affirming care and abortion care providers. I think what's really important is getting the perspective of providers in the room. Of course, we can hear from larger advocacy organizations as well. I know ACLU actually just sent out their legislative priorities today, and this was in their top 5. But it's going to be some big work happening. So would love to hear from the providers directly to make sure that we're having the folks who are most impacted by this legislation at the table.
Taylor? Other? We will keep adding to the list, so you can be thinking about it and what you're hearing in your own committee. I mean, again, just a reminder, we have, it's not just for information sharing to us. This has been a really strategic and powerful way to help our colleagues who are advocates try to move things along. We sometimes also can strategically bring in small p progressive legislators into those conversations, especially ahead of things being spelled out in committee or a particular floor vote. We really sometimes think about this very strategically in terms of timing. A quick example is when we were working on the mascot bill last session, that was pretty stalled. And so we started to have that conversation here in our public caucus and had advocates in from NAACP and Gedankana and other places. And it really started to help elevate the conversation in some new ways. Among many other examples, but we try to use this as a tool of not just insular, but out to the public.
And I'll also have one more, talking about overdose prevention and response in communities. I also have a couple bills coming together in that realm and know that some of our Democratic colleagues have drafted some legislation that will be coming before Human Services. But just think it's important to continue the work that was vetoed last year. And what I'm hearing from folks is there's a strong want and desire to take action, not study. So looking forward to that and seeing how we can be helpful in that cause.
So as you, okay, Brian, yep.
Just, I think we need to make space for the discussion about universal health care too. There's advocates in the building today. So today wasn't a good day, but maybe after the introduction of the bill, just making some space for that. Thank you.
Great.
And this is the one starting with universal primary care.
Jeff, yeah, but there's gonna be others, and so I think maybe just making space for the discussion of universal health care and looking at it from many angles.
And Brian shared earlier that he has a bill again on primary, similar, if not the same bill from last session, I imagine, on
Almost.
primary.
We got rid of this soda tax, because I don't want no nanny state taxes.
Okay, and also a reminder, advocates can Zoom in, they don't have to physically be here, we have that, right, Mike, we can have our guests be on Zoom to participate in caucus, that was what we had last time. Okay, that's a belief, so, okay, we'll double check that, but hopefully that can be. We'll double, yes, we will, okay, great. And Alana is actually on from the clerk's office, so we can follow up with you, Alana, around that question of guests being able to participate, being advocates, not just members of the legislature in our Caucus meeting. Okay. So we will keep brainstorming. So this is not the end of that list, and advocates who are listening or even here, if you have ideas and want to approach us, please feel free to either contact me or Taylor as sort of just the facilitators of this space, and we will get into the schedule. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order today, friends? All right, well, go take some time, make sure you eat your lunch. I'm gonna be a mom for 30 seconds. Make sure you drink water and pace yourself because Tuesdays can feel really busy. So use the downtime you have. So with that, we'll end the live stream. Thanks for coming, and we will